Welcome, everybody. We're excited to get rocking and rolling today, talking about sales acceleration meets social selling, how to win with account-based sales in 2017. Now, before we introduce our guest speakers, I want to make sure we just give everybody a minute or two to come in. And while we wait for them, we wanted to play a short video clip highlighting a great experience we had with our friends at DocuSign. So let everybody come in and we'll kick off here in just a second.
DocuSign provides electronic signatures to both consumers and businesses.
So one unique thing about DocuSign that's different from a lot of tech companies is we're pervasive in so many different industries and every horizontal within all those different industries. So these leads we get are very difficult to manage and understand the nuances and complexities of each business to the point that our reps were spending so much time on pre-call research. There's like a quarter to a third of our reps today were just being committed to these activities that aren't driving revenue, they're not driving opportunities.
Thanks to InsideSales.com, we've been able to eliminate the guesswork from the SDR position. We've been able to eliminate the biggest issue and the biggest frustration in their day, which is, who do I call?
So the Inside Sales product has pretty much taken out the thinking. So really what I do is concentrate on my prospect in the conversation, and that's helped improve my productivity.
It can be hard to keep things fresh and motivating. So for us, a lot of the gamification elements that Inside Sales provides, it's really the icing on the cake. Every minute things get updated, right? People can see their progress real time. When you see, your name get bumped down because someone else got flashed above, that motivates you. As we were implementing Inside Sales, one of the things we immediately saw were double-digit increases in a lot of the key metrics. Number of dials we made, number of connects, and then the real key metric for us is number of qualified opportunities per SDR that we were finding.
We're able to eliminate a lot of the guesswork that comes with when do I call a lead, which lead do I call.
InsideSales.com.
Catch that video, chat me, you can finish it up a little bit later, but I'm so anxious to get going. We got great content, great speakers. Let's dive right in. So, couple fun things. Number one, if you haven't checked us out on our Sales Acceleration podcast, talking real problems, real solutions, real people, all things sales acceleration, please do. We've got a great blog on the Insider, InsideSales.com Insider. Now, a couple housekeeping items. It's going to be a short webinar, 45 minutes. Do feel free to join us, hashtag Inside Sales Webinar, and we will get this recorded version out to you as soon as we can. Now, with that, I do want to introduce our speakers, but I want to make sure everybody knows that this is going to be an interactive webinar. We want to make sure we handle questions. Probably we'll handle those at the end. So if you haven't already, find that Q&A box in your screen and type your name and where you're coming from. And while myself and Gordon introduce ourselves, we'll just make sure everyone's in and ready to participate. So Gordon, I'm going to go first, and then I'll hand it over to you. So I'm Gabe Larson. I'm the director of our Inside Sales Labs here at InsideSales.com. I run our best practices and research group, and we are excited today to be partnering with our friends over at LinkedIn. Gordon, you mind taking a minute?
Thanks, Gabe. My name is Gordon Tobin. Been here about 7 years at LinkedIn. Have done a bunch of different sales roles from SD right to field sales. Most recently ran our sales graduate program. Just embarked running our sales solutions SMB teams here in San Francisco. And tremendously excited to be here. Thanks to Gabe and all our friends at Inside Sales Labs.
Fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to it. Looks like we've got a lot of people coming in. Nicole, Grace, Ron, Dave, Elizabeth. Good. Looks like everyone's into the Q&A box. So let's get into it. I'm going to take and just set this up briefly as we get into today's topic. Now, there's a little bit of a teaser. We're working on a study around pipeline management, looking at the full perspective. We've actually looked at about 9.8 million sales opportunities. We've tried to crunch numbers, figure out what's going on. One thing, and again, there's a little bit of a tease. This study should probably be released here in the next couple of weeks, but one thing that just jumped out was engagement throughout the month. Look at these numbers, you guys. The number of deals lost increases by 11 times at the end of the month. Now, we've been crunching to figure out why that is. I mean, I know, look, we all have, and by the way, quarterly follows the same pattern. Now, we all have often a monthly or quarterly quota, so it does make sense, but there's some real bad behavior and some real bad things going on because of what we're doing at the end of the month. We're forcing deals that shouldn't be forced. We're losing deals. We're discounting deals. If we were able to do it differently, the data is suggesting that we would increase our numbers significantly. So as we think about that, one of the things I was talking with Todd about as we were prepping for this was, thinking of that study, how do we manage buyer engagement overall? It's a different world. We're not talking about dealing with one person anymore. We're talking about dealing with multiple people. But how do you manage buyer engagement the whole month and throughout the entire pipeline? Now, LinkedIn and their sales solutions has a fantastic way to go about this, and so I'm excited to turn it over to Todd briefly and have Todd explain to you how they recommend doing it and how their customers have seen success. Todd, over to you. Or Gordon, excuse me.
No worries, Gabe. Thanks very much. So, a couple of things I want to talk to you guys about today. First of all, social selling as a concept and how to keep people engaged throughout the buying cycle. I'm sure we can all relate to having a few deals go dark on us during that cycle. But more importantly, I want to kick this off and I want to tell you a little bit of a story about myself when I was selling, just to bring this stuff to life. So, about 4 years ago, I was out in Asia Pacific, specifically in Australia, and I had a large enterprise deal on the table. And I was connected directly to the CSO. We've been in the sales cycle for several months, and I got into the stage of the deal where we were going to close. We had the closing meeting, I was presenting to the CEO and all the individual P&L holders, and I was convinced that we had an amazing relationship with this individual. Like, so much so, he's actually a mentor to me to this day. So that's how tight I was with the CSO. And he had encouraged me and emboldened me to say, this deal will close, we need this tool, I'm all about it, I'm the CSO, I'm the main decision maker, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you guys have all heard that kind of stuff before. And then, and to add a little bit of pressure to it, the guy who ran the entire talent solutions business for APAC in LinkedIn was actually texting me to make sure that this deal went through. It was a big, big deal for the company in general out in Asia Pacific. So lots of pressure. And I, of course, was 100% sure it was going to close. I forecasted up the chain, et cetera, et cetera. Came to the final day of the deal, did the presentation to the CEO and all the captains there, and it didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen is because the CEO wanted to decentralize the buying and have each individual P&L holder make a decision throughout the cycle. And that was a big, big, big knock to me. And one of the things that I could have done when I look back and I reflect now with the benefit of understanding our sales solutions business and social selling moreover is I could have multi-threaded this deal and kept all of those individual P&L holders engaged throughout the entire sales cycle. And in that sense, had I began forecasting, I would have been far more in the know that this deal was actually a much greater risk than I had realized. So, let me pause there at the end of my story, but I want to bring some of these concepts to life now, so if we can just move on. Buyer-seller relationship. So, I think everybody's going to be familiar with, what I just said there in the CSO. You've got a great relationship with one person whom you believe is the decision maker in the company. Things, though, as we're all aware, have changed. Now we're in a world where there are much, much more decision makers. I'm sure you can all relate now when you've got multiple functions, multiple P&L holders engaged in a buying cycle, and this typically makes the process a lot more complex. And so what we're seeing actually, and from our friends in Corporate Executive Board, is in many cases, and particularly in B2B, we actually have about 6.8 to 7 decision makers involved in a sales cycle. And if you actually move up the chain to more enterprise level sales, we see this anywhere multiples of 10, 15, in some cases 20 people involved in what we would consider buying committees. Which again, your ability to stay engaged with all of these people, identify all of these people, and have them engaged throughout the entire life cycle of a deal makes a huge difference in terms of getting the deal closed at the end of the day and it not going dark. Another big trend we're seeing moving through this is more budgets, more P&L holders right the way out, and decentralized buying processes. And you have to keep these folks engaged throughout the entire cycle. So how do we go about doing this? Well, the first thing is, one last point to add as well is, we are seeing, I'm sure we've all seen this, and certainly at LinkedIn with the data we have on people's mobility, there is massive turnover with decision makers themselves. Matter of fact, we see that most decision makers, about 1 in 5 or 20% are actually leaving their roles during the year. So let's pause there. Ask yourself, how many times have you had a great deal going, which you were sure you were in touch with the right person, and that one right person changed role, moved to a different company, or changed functionally in their current post, and then the deal all of a sudden went dark? Well, that's, I'm sure, something we can all relate to. It certainly happened to us. So how then do you move to break free of the one relationship habit? How do you keep these folks involved? And this is something that we've been working on for some time on LinkedIn, and with our unique data assets, it puts us in a great place to help people solve this issue. And so the first thing to say is, well, let's move away from the world of point-to-point selling. For those of you on the line that have been selling for years, I'm sure you were involved in sales cycle where you could engage one person and you could get the deal done. And what we've seen again, certainly since 2008, that buying behavior has changed. And being a network seller and multi-threading, i.e. having more contacts than the one contact that you're in touch with on the deal, is a hugely valuable thing to keep you engaged. And this is where I would say, enter social selling. This is how we can help. There's a few ways, and I want to run through these, some tactics, before we hand it back over to Gabe and team. So first of all, using social selling to drive multi-threading and continuous buyer engagement. Use social media to identify decision makers and influencers. So I think the first thing that we can help with, obviously, with the LinkedIn data, is looking through the account, finding all the relevant parties in a given company or account at the right level of seniority who are the decision makers and influencers. And really critical here is identifying that buying committee, those 6 or 7 people plus that will be involved in getting your deal over the line. Second thing is, how do you determine the best path for connecting to multiple decision makers? We've got a few ways of doing that. One, it's actually leveraging your own team's existing network. What you'll find, I'm sure you guys are doing this already, is who do we already know that can give us an in with this account? Who can give us an introduction? Ideally speaking, if there's someone on your team or on your exec staff or whatever it might be that can make that warm introduction, that will greatly shorten the sales cycle and increase the statistical probability of the deal closing. Finally, after you've identified this committee of folks, we really need to then step in and personalize the interactions for ongoing buyer engagement. What do I mean there? Basically, by looking at someone's profile, you can tell, well, we went to the same school, or we're connected through this individual, or we both like such and such sport, or whatever it is in their profile, but using a social insight that is on the profile to say, hey, Gordon, I see you went to UCD and you're connected to my colleague Jane. We'll look to start a conversation around X, Y, Z. That will get your foot in the door far more easily than reaching out with the typical kind of mail merge, generic emails that I'm sure we've all been used to sending out in times past. So let me double click into a few of these for a moment. So using social media. So the first thing is, and again, this is part of the LinkedIn platform. I'm sure all of you folks on the line are using LinkedIn all the time to try and find the right people. One of the things that we can do with our Sales Navigator and social selling is help automate this and help identify the right decision makers and influencers at a given company and through the platform in a seamless way, which makes it far more easier for reps, etc., to move through. Second piece then that I want to touch on is the best path forward to connecting to multiple decision makers. So I spoke about this briefly a moment ago, but it's, again, if you look at the interface here, we're looking at Noah. He's the VP of IT. And what it's doing on the right-hand side, you can see that it's telling me how I'm connected to Noah. We have an individual, unique contact that connects us both in our network. And ideally speaking, what I can do there with Noah is ask that person for a warm introduction and say, hey, I see you know Noah. This is one of my accounts. You guys both went to the same school. You work together. Would you be open to introducing me to him? I'd love to discuss our suite of XYZ products. No problem if you don't. This, and I'm sure you guys, again, are already doing this, but the best way to get into any account is obviously a nice warm introduction from someone who knows your prospect. It's a beautiful way of doing it. We just simply automate that which is already being done. Next on the line, personalized interactions for ongoing buyer engagement. So again, when you look at people's LinkedIn profiles, and I'm probably preaching to certain members of the choir here, but finding things on their profile that give you a social insight to connect with them. And this could be a bunch of different stuff. And we actually have this in the updates news feed in our Sales Solutions product and also on LinkedIn.com. But the Sales Solutions product is specific to your account list. So let's say for a moment you upload all your accounts into Sales Solutions. And what it'll do is it'll give you updates of anything happening with specific individuals that you have identified as decision makers in those accounts. So let's say, for argument's sake, Noah gets mentioned in the newspaper for getting new funding for their next round of Series C. That will come up automatically. That is the perfect moment to reach out to Noah and say, hey Noah, congratulations, see you just got your Series C. Congrats to you and all the team. By the way, I work for LinkedIn, was hoping to connect, could see if you've done X, Y, and Z. That is far better than reaching out with any generic cold email or cold call. And, if you pause there for a moment and ask yourself, when's the last time you actually bought a product to someone who just called you over the phone generically? Not too often. But if you get an email or an InMail from someone with a relevant social insight, the probability that you're going to interact and engage with that person goes up exponentially. And so, just to drive it home, we got 3 main key points I want to get across to you guys here. Using social media to identify the key decision makers and or influencers. Second, determine your best path for connecting to those folks using your existing networks in your company or people who perhaps you've studied with in the past, but understanding how you're already connected to that company. What is your social proximity to those decision makers and influencers you've already identified? And then finally, personalizing the interactions for ongoing buyer engagement. And if, again, you engage the right people throughout the buying cycle, you have what we call a multi-threaded deal cycle. So you're engaged with multiple people, so you don't end up in that place where your one person goes dark because they changed job or whatever happened. You've identified the right people and you've reached out to them with an insightful social gesture. That is the best way to get your foot in the door, other than a warm introduction. This is something that we've been working on for years now, and with our Sales Solutions platform, etc., we feel like we're leading with the tip of the spear on this whole social selling movement. With that, you need to know who, how, and when, but I'm going to pass it over to Gabe to take you through this now. Thanks very much, everybody, for your time. And if you do have any questions, we have the live feed on the right-hand side of your screen. Happy to answer those as well.
Yeah, do so. Thanks so much, Gordon. Again, we'll handle some of the Q&A here at the end. LinkedIn Sales Solutions, such a great product, especially in this world of sophisticated and strategic selling. Great points, Gordon. So let me see if I can add to some of our thoughts on making sure that you consistently engage buyers throughout the whole customer and prospect journey. I want to try to answer 3 key questions here. Who do you go after? And again, Gordon talked about, the 6.8 decision makers involved in a decision. I want to get tactical on it, though. And then I want to talk about how to go after them. And social needs to be part of your arsenal, absolutely. But I want to introduce a couple other concepts to add to that. And then lastly, this when concept we'll touch on briefly. Let's go into each of those. First one is going after the who. Now, I wanted to start, and I'm still in a play from Gordon here. I hope you don't mind, Gordon. Thinking of an example where we also kind of use some of these principles to have a pretty effective strategy when it comes to buyer engagement. So this is an account-based sales strategy that we just ran recently within the last 6 months. We basically sat down and identified, our target audience, our target accounts, and who in those would be our target contacts. We then sat through and figured out what would be the best outreach strategy. And we ended up sending this about 200 footballs signed by Steve Young to 200 of our target accounts, and then we had a great follow-up strategy. And we had about a 75% conversion rate on appointments. It was fantastic. Now, there was a couple things that went into this campaign, and I wanted to break it down and see if we couldn't spill out the concept of buyer engagement. So the first one is when you think of target accounts and contacts, you've got to find a way to get the art and the science to come together. So in our instance, we actually sat down with our enterprise sales team and said, hey, who are your target accounts and contacts? Then we ran what we call Neurolytics. That's our machine learning algorithm to see if the data supported that these were the right target accounts and contacts, and who else should be part of this outreach. And again, we came out with 200 contacts, about 200 accounts, 5 people at each account. One of the ways we were able to successfully identify which accounts were most optimal when we sat with our enterprise team was using this model. And this is more of the art part, but I think it's always important to merge the art and the science, so I wanted to touch on it briefly. This ANIM model holds absolutely true. This is your qualification model. So if you want to know if a company works or should be in your target list or not, look no further than ANIM. Do they have the authority? Are you finding contacts who can buy from you? Do they have some sort of need? Do they use a CRM that you potentially hook onto or work with? Urgency. Is there any kind of urgency? Is there a compelling event? And then last but not least, do they have a funding event that happened? Have they announced revenue? Are they growing? If you can determine these elements, you can start to easily determine if a company should be on your target account list or not. And so as you think about nailing this down, and I just wanted to give a quick example here of how I've often had teams brainstorm through this activity, sit down and say, okay, what is our target account? What does that look like? Well, title, function, what technology are they using? Are they engaging with us? Are they looking at our marketing material? Again, do they have funding potentially present? Each one of these aligns with that ANIM question, and you start to fill out this type of table. And then again, using the art portion, you're able to successfully determine if this company should be a target account. When it comes to buyer engagement, you've got to start with the right people and right number of people. And so, again, I would advocate for a manual way, applying the art, your target account and target contact, and then delve into that science. Find a data-driven approach to be able to confirm or add to what your gut intuitively tells you. So that's piece one, is really going after the who. Now, the how is becoming more and more interesting. This is, I feel like, changing all the time, but in our opinion, don't be siloed here. Don't just be an email marketer. Don't just be a cold caller. Find a way to do a multi-touch cadence or reach out strategy that can really hit your target buyers at the right time in the right way. So now with this campaign that we did, again, we mixed 5 different elements: a direct mailer, which was basically the football, and then we brought in phone calls, email, social touches, obviously using LinkedIn sales solution. That combination we felt like was extremely powerful. So on this concept, again, the art and the science is going to be important. You need to know your target audience. If I'm attacking a higher level person, I might not be able to get them on the phone with my initial reach out. So I need to have a persona-based outreach initiative. If I'm approaching maybe a champion who's lower in the organization, okay, maybe I start with the phone and see if they can't coach me up into the higher echelons. Now, data and science is allowing us to actually predict which method is most applicable and when people are most likely to interact with different messages. Let me give you a quick example here. So my team, truthfully, my team didn't want me to tell the special sauce on our outreach campaign, our Don't Be Blindsided campaign, but this is a sample cadence, and walk with me here just for a second. So I want to be strategic in the way I reach out. So I identify the persona. So I'm going after a VP of sales. So on day 0, I drop the football, right? So it lands. I use a vendor to help me do that. On day 1, I have my team start attacking the follow-up strategy. A lot of organizations, they're introducing direct mailers, but then they're stopping. They're just sending the cups or the gifts, and then they don't do much of a follow-up. Got to have that strategic follow-up. So walk with me here just a little bit. So day one, okay, I follow up with an email. Then I try to get them on social. I jump on LinkedIn and try to let them know, hey, did you get that football, or did you, you touch or like something that they've done? Then follow it up with a phone call. Then 3 days later, you do another set of activities. Then 3 days, you can see day 7, 10, 12, and 14. Now, we're doing a big research study on optimal cadence strategies, and I'm telling you, those 5 pillars form a really sophisticated and strategic outreach of social, email, phone, voicemail, and direct mailers. I'm a big proponent of those 5, and I think they can be very effective. Now, there's some things you want to be thinking about. When it comes to cadence, you don't want to space out the activities too far. Most of our research is saying 1 to 3 days. You go a week in between activities, you lose top of mind. Again, you don't want to focus too much on one activity. Don't be that cold caller. Don't be the email marketer. Find your persona, figure out what works, and then build that cadence strategy off of that. And then optimal number of touches on this, you guys. If you're really doing an advanced strategy, you're typically going in an account-based model, 30 to 60 days, and you should be looking at 10 to 20 touches, 10 minimum, probably 20 maximum, thinking strategically about that. Now, I mentioned this. If you've not engaged with these direct mailer companies, this is just kind of a side note because I've fallen in love. Again, you got to just test different things, but try some of these direct mailer stuff. It's a great way to engage people, top of funnel. In this cadence strategy we're talking about can be really fun. Coffee Sender, shout out to those guys. PFL, they're fantastic. I could name about 10 others, but I don't want to give all the secret sauce away, so I want you to have to do a little bit of due diligence as well. So in closing on that, again, art and science here. Find a way to make sure you understand your audience and what you believe would be successful in engaging with them as you prospect, but bring in some of this science. Some of our tools, our playbooks tool, allows you to actually say, hey, I want to send an email, but I don't know when the best time to send it is. Well, you press a button, and it's going to look at all of the interactions with those types of personas, and it's going to send your email at an optimal time. So it's that kind of art and science that can absolutely take you to the next level. Okay, just a couple more pieces here. This one piece is interesting. I wanted to touch on that bottom of funnel. So, okay, we've identified who we've gone after. We figured out the how. We've reached out effectively, and we've got this strategic reach out strategy. We've had the conversation, and now they're in our pipeline. And sometimes I feel like this is a misnomer. You know, people say, okay, account-based sales, it's done now. It's really only account-based sales development. But I'm a big believer, both with LinkedIn as well as with InsideSales.com. Once it's an opportunity, that's a great time to use both of those tools to make sure your buyer engagement sticks all the way to close. So let me just give you a couple tidbits here. Again, thinking of this same campaign, sent the footballs, reached out, got the appointments, but now how do we manage them effectively in our entire pipeline? And I want to just touch on kind of a quick strategy here. So pipeline management is becoming extremely important, especially in an account-based sales model. And there's really 4 areas that I believe reps need to just have laser focus on. It's quantity, quality, velocity, and balance. And again, this is more of the art part, and I want to talk about how the science can help you double down on this, but you've got to know how to do it irrespective of technology. So quantity. Is the total quantity of your pipeline reasonable versus your quota? It's a big one. Quality. What percentage of your pipeline has a scheduled next event? You've got to make sure, if you're not actively moving it forward, you don't have quality pipeline. Velocity. Are opportunities moving through the pipeline stages at a reasonable rate? What would be some of your ratios from stage to stage? And then lastly is balance. I see a lot of times, sales reps, they get so much, they work so hard to get some into their pipeline, they close that, and then they got to start all back over. You want to make sure you have even balance at the top and bottom of your funnel. Now, the best way to do that is have that art and science working together. You need to know your sales process like the back of your hand, but then you got to be looking for data and science to be able to help you manage some of that. Our sales HD forecast, our high definition forecast product, helps sales reps strategically manage their pipeline, know which opportunities to pursue and which ones are decaying or delaying so that you can strategically move them forward. Finding a way to manage art and science can be absolutely strategic in the way that you manage your pipeline. So, I know that was a lot, but tee that off. Our Playbooks product, fantastic in thinking through an account-based sales model, partnering that with LinkedIn Sales Solutions. I think you've got a home run. And with that, want to turn it over here and see if we can't get a couple of questions. I know, Gordon, I've got about 15 questions for you, but I know that we have a handful from the audience as well. Let's dive into these, Gordon. One for you to start. Can you talk a little bit about some of these triggers that sales reps should be scanning for really opening business-related conversations? I mean, you're at this all the time. What works for you?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe, and thanks for the question. So I think there's a number of things, but I think a lot of the folks on the line obviously very used to using the LinkedIn.com version of the feed. So you guys are more than used to seeing updates, posts, news about people in your personal network and that kind of stuff. And these types of updates can help you open up client conversations. The difference here is with our Sales Solutions product, we have these updates specific to your accounts or to your leads. And so some of the triggers that we look at are things like a client's company getting a new round of funding, perfect moment to reach out with a nicely timed email to say congratulations, which is always a nice way of doing it. Another one's a job change or promotion. Again, I think there's two interesting things that can happen here. One, obviously, reaching out and saying congrats and starting the conversation that way. But also, it's great sales intelligence in case you get a bluebird where someone who has previously bought your product moves to another company, and then there may be scope to start a new sales dialogue there. Always a great way of coming in. And then it's like the simple things, like birthdays. Great way to start a conversation. I think if you can pick up on these relevant and well-timed pieces of intel, like we find they are fantastic for opening the door and far more effective than the kind of conventional sales tactic of picking up the phone many, many times a day, which I'm a big believer in the phone. I don't take away from it. That's where I learned. But I have learned over the last few years that reaching out with a well-timed social insight or a sales trigger is a really effective way of getting your foot in the door. Thanks for the question.
I love the trigger selling. I think that's a home run. If you can time that right, it could be huge. Couple others here, Gordon. I mean, social selling, it's now obviously a movement. I'd just be interested in, and we got a couple people who have kind of advocated for this as well. What kind of results are social sellers seeing? I mean, are we seeing a big boost in sales as people really put this into their arsenal of sales, kind of sales effectiveness product?
Yeah, thanks. So I would say, certainly anecdotally across our sales teams here internally, we've seen a huge uplift in results. But just to give an organic kind of stat that actually comes from corporate executive boards, sales professionals who exhibit these strong social selling behaviors, whether it be using a social insight or a sales trigger to get the foot in the door or someone in your network, we actually see 45% more opportunities created. And out of that, there's 51% more likely to achieve quota. And then for those of you that have a President's Club structure, it's 3 times more likely to get to President's Club. And again, these stats are independent. They come from corporate executive boards, so independently verified. So huge uptick for those that get on board the social selling side of things, particularly in B2B.
I love it. Okay. This one's actually more directed at inside sales, but it dovetails into another question, Gordon, that I want to pull you on to. So we got Owen saying, thinking about direct mail, does email have the same effect as regular mail? Now, this is an interesting one, Owen, because this is becoming a little newer phenomenon for some of us old timers in sales. Gordon, I don't know if you can call us old timers, but somewhat old timers in sales. I did do direct mailers, 15 years ago when I started my career, but I don't think there's a lot of good research, but I know that whenever you're thinking about prospecting, you've always got to mix it up. We've had a lot of success with direct mailers in comparison with email, and the combination is even more powerful. So, Owen, I'd challenge you to test it out. Now, Gordon, bringing you into this one, thinking about an outreach strategy. I mean, obviously LinkedIn is the social selling and outreach as well as top of funnel, bottom of funnel kind of buyer engagement tool. When you think of the outreach strategy, how do you coach your teams or your customers to use social with some of these other channels like email and phone calls?
Yeah, it's a great question. Something that we have a lot of discussion about internally. So I think when I think about the cadence of different channels of outreach, we definitely want to think about the importance of social connectivity. And there's never going to be a moment where I'm just reaching out or encouraging the team to just reach out because they're on the list. I think we definitely try and lean in and be strategic and thoughtful about it. So I always make sure that we lead with some sort of social insight. We typically don't lead with email first. We usually use InMail, which is the kind of internal email system that we have on the LinkedIn platform. But if I had to prioritize anything above all else, I'd say it'd be a warm introduction. Right? So things like Team Link, knowing who in your company can connect you to a prospect becomes a critical part of our outreach strategy. And if I don't have that, I'll usually go to InMail because it's across the LinkedIn network and there's a lot more insights and connectivity through social gestures, etc. that you can pick up on. And if I don't see a response from an InMail and the person is not active on LinkedIn as I hope, then I'll go the email route. But as a tip, I'll often copy and paste my content on InMail to my email so there's some context there and it's not completely cold. However, Gabe, I would round out by saying, I'm actually on the same page as you, that I believe, there's different moments for different strategies, and sometimes things like direct mail work great. I mean, I love the story about the signed American footballs that you guys sent out. I think that's fantastic. That actually brought a smile to my face during that one. So, I think it depends. There are best practices, but I'd say there's a time and a place for most things.
I love how Gordon said signed American footballs, right? Because I'm assuming an American football means something different than just a regular football to you. Am I right, Gordon?
It does. You might detect I have a bit of an Irish accent. Been living here the last year, so try and hide it sometimes in these calls and slow down so people will understand me. But yeah.
No, and I'm mostly just giving you all the time. Couple more questions, and then we can wrap things up here. So I want to just dive a little bit deeper into this. I know a lot of teams. I was actually with a business development or sales development leader maybe just a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I feel like my team is turning into email marketers. I'm a little bit nervous about it. But a lot of teams, especially on prospecting, will send out emails and then they'll watch for response rates as a way to kind of manage their outreach strategy. I see somebody respond and then I can kind of maybe do something as a follow-up or a phone call, etc. Thinking about InMail, do you and your teams or your customers use InMail in a similar fashion? If not, what is the most effective way to use InMail? Now, I know you touched on that briefly, but I was hoping you could maybe just dovetail and go one more step deeper on kind of the use of InMail.
Yeah, this is InMail, just so I can make sure I got this question appropriately. This is InMail best practices?
Yeah, I mean, especially in relation to somebody who says, hey, I send emails and I watch response rates and then I respond, Gabe. That's my outreach strategy. So how would you respond to someone who says, that's kind of my strategy, I'm now adopting InMail? How do I move the two or work the two together?
Got it. Yeah. So I think a starting point for an answer would be taking a look at the accounts. But I think if someone is engaged on LinkedIn, if you can see that they're posting material, status updates, they have a well-filled out profile. There's some things that you can look at on someone's profile, like how often they've shared social insights. And they seem active recently on LinkedIn. We would always, drink our own Kool-Aid and send an email first. Generally, I think that's a great way to get a foot in the door, particularly if they're active. However, there are some folks who have members on the platform who are not as engaged. And sometimes, we don't always try and email first, but sometimes an email can work there as well. And I think it's a common sense judgment. Look at your account, look at their LinkedIn profile. If they seem active on LinkedIn, definitely use the InMail. If they don't, I'd probably try the InMail in tandem with an email and then follow up with a phone call. That would be kind of the older school way I would have approached it. But I think for me, InMail and the response rates and the effectiveness of it, I think you can get a good proxy by looking at someone's profile and how active they are on LinkedIn. That's usually helpful.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we've got a question here from Mary that just popped open, and she said, talk to me about InMail versus direct mail, which is more effective. And Mary, again, as we're kind of talking, I think the strategy is you probably want to test it and give them a try, right? I think at times a phone call is going to be more effective. At times an InMail, at times you may want to test a direct mailer. You got to find for different audience which works for you and see if you can apply that. But I've found all of those to be effective with different audiences. Now, one of the questions, Gordon, that always comes up. Sorry, Gordon, I'm kind of pounding you with questions.
Keep coming, brother.
We'll wrap here in just a second, but big question that always comes up, and it's come up a couple times here in the thread. I just wanted to throw it out to you. This might be a softball, but thinking about the freemium version versus the premium version, maybe the Navigator versus just something I sign up for free. You've talked about some other. You've mentioned features like Team Link, etc. What's the advantage, or give me the quick pitch on why I should jump from the freemium to the premium?
From the freemium to the premium? Just to make sure I got that right?
Kind of your free LinkedIn to the more advanced premium or the Sales Navigator.
Yeah, well, starting point or how to frame that is Sales Navigator is software as a service that we've specifically designed to help sales professionals. And so there's a bunch of features in there that are specific to a sales process. So let me give you a couple of examples. I think the first one that they gave was Team Link. So one of the great things that the Sales Navigator platform can do is it will automatically tell you of all the accounts that you've just loaded into the platform, how you are connected to those different accounts and or decision makers in those accounts via people that you already work with who are on your team. Right? So using people in your company who know your prospect to give you a warm in. This is something that I'm sure all of you on the phone do to a certain extent organically. But what we do is take every connection of everybody on your team, map those back to your accounts, and then tell you what your in is. That's something that's very specific to our Sales Solutions product. And again, hugely helpful in terms of helping the overall efficiency of a team. Second thing that we do that I think is fantastic is a function called Lead Builder. So again, looking through your accounts, we can list out all the various different decision makers, influencers, and then actually build a lead list of people that your rep should be following up with directly. And again, that's based on connection data as well in terms of how you have a warm in. I think the last point, and there's a ton I could mention, but just in the interest of time, the last point I'd make is, we have this saying internally that selling is a team sport. And so when you have your teams engage on the Sales Solutions platform, it opens up the combined power of all of your networks, all the combined insights that your prospects are sharing across the platform, and serving those up to your sales teams to engage with the right people, with the right insight at the right time, and again, specifically designed for the sales workflow, which overall net makes the whole process way more efficient and allows your reps doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is speaking to the right people, having the right conversations, and again at the right time. So I think that's how I would kind of frame the major key differences with moving on to the premium platform versus the freemium platform. And one last actually additional point that I'll make is, and I shouldn't have neglected to mention this in the beginning, but it opens up the LinkedIn platform. So I think one of the things that you'll see on the freemium is you only have so much insight and you can only view so many profiles. But what the LinkedIn Sales Solutions platform will actually open up your second and third degree networks as well, which just gives you a far bigger total addressable market of prospects to look at.
Great. Well, Gordon, let's bring this kind of to a close. I'm going to just answer this real quick question from Harry. Question about what is the right number of decision makers or contacts I should be going after per account? Just a quick one, and we can close here. But Terry, depending on if you're a high velocity model versus an account based model, Gordon showed that stat from corporate executive board, 6.8. I've typically found, 5 is about right for, again, where we typically play. But that's more of an account-based model. If you're in a high-velocity model, a B2C model, you're looking at 1, 2, max of 3 decision makers. But that's something you've got to identify within your company, who actually buys from you within each account. But I've found 5 to be the right number for us. I think that's about right in an account-based model. High velocity, again, is quite a bit lower, usually in the 1 to 2, max of 3. So thanks for the question, Terry. So, Gordon, really appreciate it. Everybody loved the questions. I know there's always more. I'm a big believer in social selling. Gordon, I got to admit, I had my SSI score up to as high as 97, but I'm just looking at it. It looks like I've dropped to an 83. I'm disappointed. So,
nice.
Big believer in the software, though. I thought I'd throw my plugins in. Any closing comments from you, Gordon, before we let everybody go?
Just a closing comment of gratitude. Big thanks to you, Gabe, and all our friends at Inside Sales as well. Thanks to the team here for setting up the webinar. And, of course, most importantly, thanks to everybody who came on and all the great questions as well. It's a lot of fun engaging with you guys today, so many thanks.
Awesome, guys. Hey, great day, and let's get at it. Take care. Bye-bye.